Hello everyone and happy December. I hope you're all having an awesome festive season so far. So this is of course my November wrap up. I know that it's late and I've just been really disorganised and all over the place in general at the moment, and I won't be able to get my December TBR up to you guys until tomorrow, so please sit tight for that. And yes, I have been out in the rain today, which is why my hair looks absolutely ridiculous, but I'm just going to push on through and let you guys know what I managed to finish during the month of November. So in November I managed to finish 6 books and I gave all of them 4 stars. So it has been a pretty good reading month for me in terms of what I've actually read this month. So the first one that I want to talk about is a book that I buddy read with a book blogger called Lauren. Her blog is Where There's Ink There's Paper. I will leave a link to her blog in the description down below, so please go and check it out. And this month we buddy read Nosferatu by Joe Hill. I've read a couple of Joe Hill books before. I've read Heart-Shaped Box and Horns and I really enjoyed both of them. They're both very weird, creepy horror reads, and I've had Nosferatu on my Kindle for quite a long time, and then Lauren tweeted me saying she wanted to buddy read it with me, and I said yes, of course. I've been curious about it for ages. So this follows a story across generations really. It's about a young girl who manages to escape the clutches of a really terrifying vampiric creature when she's really young, and I don't want to say he's a vampire because he's actually so much more than the typical blood-sucking creature you'd normally identify as a vampire. There's a lot more to him than that, and I actually find him a lot more creepy. It's a very, very unique take on a vampire. So she manages to escape him when she's very young, and he holds this grudge against her for being able to do this, and he haunts and stalks her for pretty much her entire life until she has a son of her own, and then he goes after her son almost as like revenge for her managing to escape him all those years before. And it's so weird and atmospheric and twisted and creepy, and I really enjoyed picking out all the really subtle Stephen King references in this because of course Stephen King is Joe Hill's father, so I loved that Pennywise was mentioned at least once that I can remember, possibly more than that, and there were some other references to Stephen King books and stories in there too, which I really enjoyed. Also, if you are a horror fan looking for a Christmas book, Nosferatu is definitely a really good pick. It's got a really weird, twisted, atmospheric, Christmassy kind of theme to it. So yeah, definitely really enjoyed reading Nosferatu this month. The next one I read this month is Some Kind of Wonderful by Giovanna Fletcher. This was a new release this month and I did write a full review of it on my blog, so I will of course leave a link to that review in the description down below, so check that out if you are interested in my deeper thoughts and feelings on it. But this is a adult contemporary romance book about a woman whose boyfriend dumps her just as she thinks he's about to propose to her. So she goes through this huge whirlwind of emotions right at the start of this book. She's left heartbroken, she moves back home with her mum and her stepdad, we meet her family, we learn that her younger sister is heavily pregnant and about to get married, and we're treated to some really cute, funny family dynamics there. After she's healed a little bit, she goes on a journey into single life. She learns a lot about herself and how to be happy on her own. And it's just really lovely and uplifting and life affirming, and definitely something that I needed to read this month because I have been struggling with issues relating to a situation similar to what our main character finds herself in from my past recently. So yeah, it was definitely something that I needed to read. A really lovely, warm, fuzzy adult contemporary romance, so give my review a read if you are more interested. The next book that I managed to finish this month is Bird Box by Josh Malerman, and this is a very dark psychological thriller / horror, and it does definitely straddle the horror genre because it's much darker and scarier than any other psychological thriller that I've ever read. So this is about a world where people can't look directly outside anymore because there's something out there that makes them lose their minds, and this book has 2 story strands to it. So one of them, our main character is pregnant and she's living in a house with a lot of other young people who are trying to figure out exactly what's going on outside, and they're trying to survive on the small rations that they have. And then there's another strand where the world is just as terrible, and it seems to be 4 years later, and she seems to be living on her own with 2 small children, and she is making a journey to a safe place that she has heard about, and it's just so tragic and gruesome and addictive. I flew through this book. I didn't want to put it down because I wanted to know what was going on here, and you never really find out exactly what it is that's making these people go crazy, and I think that makes it scarier because it's obviously open to your own interpretation. But it was just so creepy, and I know that this book will stay with me for a long time. So if you are looking for a very dark psychological thriller / horror story, then I would definitely recommend A Bird Box. The next book that I managed to finish this month is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I cannot believe that I've not read this book before now, because it was just so cute and so funny. This is of course an epic classic children's fantasy about Bilbo Baggins the Hobbit, who unwittingly goes on a journey with a bunch of dwarves to get their gold back from the goblins and the dragon Smaug, and it's just so cute. It really is. I have seen the trilogy of films that they made from this book, and I can't believe they got 3 full-length feature films out of not even a 400-page book, because they added so much into those films. Like, I know they added that weird romance between one of the younger dwarfs and that female elf character that they created, and that's not even hinted at in this book, and I really didn't miss it. I really love this story on its own, and I think I will watch those films through slightly different eyes now that I know that they added so much that probably wasn't needed, because I just really love this little self-contained adventure in itself. So yeah, it was just really lovely, really funny. So if you haven't read The Hobbit, I'm sure you have, because I know I'm really late to the Tolkien party, but if you haven't, then I would definitely recommend reading it. And the last 2 books that I managed to finish during the month of November are The Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers, which were of course the first 2 books in the Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R.R. Tolkien. So of course this follows years after the events of The Hobbit. We are following Bilbo's nephew Frodo, who has inherited Bilbo's magic ring, and we learn about the truth of the ring, exactly what it is, who wants it and why. The wizard Gandalf tells Frodo that it's no longer safe in the Shire and that he needs to take it to Rivendell, which is where the elves live, and there they will decide exactly what to do with it. So Frodo leaves the Shire with a few of his hobbity friends on a journey to Rivendell. They meet a lot of very fun, whimsical fantasy characters on the way, and that was really lovely to watch and meet all of those different people and obviously get to know them. So they get to Rivendell, where it is decided that the ring will be destroyed in the fires of Mordor, and Frodo volunteers to take the ring to Mordor and destroy it. And he is joined on his journey to Mordor by a collection of characters, one being a very sexy, mysterious wanderer guy called Aragorn, another being a awesome archer elf called Legolas, and another being a dwarf called Gimli, who is a direct descendant from one of the dwarves in The Hobbit. So they go with the hobbits and Gandalf to Mordor, and then at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, the Fellowship separates, and then we go on to the Two Towers, which is in 2 halves really. So the first half of the Two Towers follows the Fellowship, all of the Fellowship apart from Frodo and Sam. So in the first half, the rest of the Fellowship are learning about the Ents and the Tree People and their history, and their battle with the orcs and the evil wizard Saruman. And then the second half of the Two Towers, we are following Frodo and Sam, who have teamed up with the creature called Gollum to take the ring to Mordor and destroy it. I really enjoyed most of it, but Tolkien does tend to be very description dumpy, if you know what I mean. And if you read The Hobbit directly before, which is what I did, you definitely notice the step up in writing style, because The Lord of the Rings is an adult fantasy trilogy and The Hobbit is very much a children's fantasy. You definitely notice the difference in style, and therefore the writing style was quite difficult to tap into in The Lord of the Rings. There were long paragraphs of description which were quite dull and quite dense and quite difficult to chug through, but I will say that definitely the action scenes and the characterizations are definitely worth pushing through those really long descriptions, because they are just so lovely and whimsical and magical. And I really did enjoy some of the descriptions, certainly of the elf places. So I really enjoyed the descriptions of Rivendell. I just would love to go to Rivendell. It sounds like an amazing place, and I really enjoyed the idea of Lothlorien, which is where the forest elves live. That sounds like a really lovely place too, and I really loved so many of the characters in Lord of the Rings too. I also really loved being able to see where so many of my favourite fantasy writers have clearly got their influences from Tolkien. So I can see so much of A Song of Ice and Fire in the events of Lord of the Rings. I can see bits of Harry Potter as well. I can see bits of Sarah J Maas's books too, and I loved being able to see where I'm pretty sure so many fantasy writers that are popular today have got their influences from Tolkien, and I absolutely loved it. Of course, there's so much influence in Stephen King's Dark Tower series too in this. So I just loved all of that, and this is why I love reading classic epic fantasies, and why I'm really excited to read The Return of the King in December and finally be able to say that I have read the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So yeah, really excited to be finishing this trilogy in December. So yeah, and that is it for my November wrap up. To be honest with you, I did want to read more. For example, I did want to finish the Lord of the Rings trilogy this month, but I'm perfectly happy to say that that will roll on to next month. But I have just been quite stressed and down recently, and I've been in a little bit of a reading slump, if I'm going to be totally honest with you. But I've had other things going on. I have been quite busy recently, and I've also recently started rewatching Supernatural from the start, so it's not all bad, because technically right now I am going to bed with a 22-year-old Sam Winchester every night, so it's really not all bad, to be honest with you. But anyway, what have you guys read this month? Please let me know. I will leave all of my social media in the description down below. I hope you're having an awesome day, and I will see you very soon for another video. Bye bye.